Against All Logic, also known as Nicholas Jar, is back again with a new collection of tracks, I guess you could call it. It is, of course, a fully realised album, but the first album that he released under this alias Against All Logic was 2012 to 2017, so I could only imagine a lot of the ideas was spanning across 5 years, and once again we have this new project here doing a very similar thing, but it's a much shorter period of time, only between 2017 and 2019. Now, being a fan of 2012 to 2017, I was certainly looking forward to seeing what Nicholas Jar would do next under this name. It was very vocal sample heavy, very rhythmic the first time around. It was very much just indebted to the house genre. It didn't really take you out of that at all at any point. And as much as I loved it initially, I will say over a few years now, it hasn't quite held up for me in the same way it initially did, although I do still think it is pretty damn good. Certainly worthy of the praise that it got. I mean, Nicholas Jar is just really fucking good at making music, to be honest. This definitely has met expectations as well, to be honest. Although the expectations I had for what it sounded like, that certainly hasn't been met, because I think there is quite a decent amount of variation on this album. It certainly is not just what we got before, and I'm pretty appreciative of the fact that this album really tries going for so many different sounds and styles and remains very consistent and very enjoyable throughout. It really does feel bolder to me this time around, although that doesn't necessarily mean to say it's not without its flaws, because I do think there are flaws which I'll get into. But yeah, generally I am enjoying this quite a bit. Now, the first thing you hear on this album is a Beyonce sample, which I think threw me for a loop initially, because I didn't quite expect to hear that, but I think it's interpolated incredibly well into the track. I'm just sort of waiting for something else to happen though as the track goes along. For me, I'm just not entirely that enamored with the sample for it to be used for that long and that repetitive. It definitely needed switching up. But it's a cool start to the album. But yeah, I think a few times on this album, Nicholas Jar just runs a few ideas into the ground just a little bit. Certainly Faith being a good example of that too. I just kind of find everything about this track really monotonous. And does it need to be 6 minutes? I mean, that's up to you to decide. But for me, it didn't need to be 6 minutes. But then you've got Loving You Is Wrong, which like bursts in from the intro track, which I think is really cool. And I just love the soulfulness of this track, that sample that he uses. He's actually really good at finding these types of samples. He did this on 2012 to 2017 as well. It's just such a slick way of interpolating it into his track. I mean, it's just very much in the same way that DJ Seinfeld does on a lot of his tracks, just manages to work in those vocals just so bloody effortlessly. The track If You Can't Do It, I think, is pretty damn cool as well. I just want to see Buff pop lock to this track. I know he's got a pretty good pop-in motion going on, which I can't fucking do. I wish I could do it. And then at the end with those vocals, it's pretty powerful the way it's used. Again, just Nicholas Jar doing what he does incredibly well, just displaying. It's kind of like he's flexing on this album. There are so many times where it just feels like he's flexing on us. The D first track has this bustling beat. It just knocks you. Honestly, this beat is so fucking good. And I love how icy Penny is. What a great track this one is, honestly. I love the way that little melody like comes in and out of the track too, you know what I mean, if you've heard the song. Yeah, this is another great example of just a really unique blend of ideas. And another great example of that is certainly With an Addict, which has this footwork type of vocal sample, but then the track itself isn't really a footwork song. It's honestly really weird to me. This straight up reminded me instantly of a DJ Rashad track. I can't speak tonight. Honestly, listen to the track Pass That Shit by DJ Rashad, a great track from a fantastic album. Wow, such a fucking good album anyway. But yeah, with the way the vocals on that track are like, light it up, motherfucker, light it up. Light it up, motherfucker, light it up. Reminds me a lot of the vocal sample on With an Addict, but of course the beat on both songs are like from completely different genres. I mean, It's very much just a footwork track, the one I'm thinking of, but then Nicholas Jar doesn't really quite take it in that direction with the beat on this one, which I just find to be really cool. It's just little bits like this on the album that I appreciate a lot, because it's certainly not just him playing it safe, which again, 2012 to 2017 is not by any means a bad album at all. It is really good, but it is quite a safe album in terms of its sound. Whereas this time around, I mean, he's definitely not just keeping to what he knows. So it's a sign of a truly great artist who can just change things up, take risks, and be daring, just like Nicholas Jar is here. And while we're talking about things that remind me of other things, the way Alarm comes in, listen to this track. Does this sound like Jailbreak the Tesla to you from Injury Reserve? It straight up sounds like Jailbreak the Tesla to me, but as soon as it comes on, which is obviously not a bad thing, and it's not like an exact rip for rip of that track, but it just totally reminds me of it. So yes, so much to take from this album. The closing track isn't particularly very strong, and I've mentioned my other issues throughout a few of the other tracks, but they're fairly minor. I mean, it runs pretty smoothly throughout. I think most of the sample usage is really strong. The beats on this album are really fantastic as well. I think a 7 out of 10 is pretty fair from me. I think it's a really strong release, and it's very satisfying to listen to as well. So many cool ideas being thrown around on this album, and they're executed pretty damn well. I just wanted to end off though this review by saying that I don't think it's particularly very fair to just label it as gatekeeping whenever anyone ever says, hey, if you like Nicholas Jar's work in Against All Logic, you should definitely check out more house music because there's so much out there to love. Like, I think you're mixing up your definitions of what gatekeeping means if you think that's what it is. I just want more albums in this style to be found by people and to be loved and to be hyped up in the way that Nicholas Jar gets hyped up with his albums. Because as good as they are, for me, I think there are other albums out there that are worthy of the same amount of praise. And I don't think that's necessarily what gatekeeping means. My favourite album of 2019 was literally a house album. I just want to see more of this genre getting out there and spreading around and getting the love. That's just what I want for all music that I like. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to end it off with. I know this is a big conversation surrounding Against All Logic, and debates get brought up all the time. That was just what I wanted to say. I want to kind of finalize my thoughts on that. So yeah, check this out if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts if you're loving this, or if you're liking it about as much as I am in the comments. Share the video if you haven't already. Like the video if you haven't already. Do all those things, and have a good day.